Tax savings and big rates of return. Those are two things that everyone likes talking about or hearing or doing. So we're going to talk about that and ways to put money in your pocket, lowering taxes. Hey, Kenner French with Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. I'm hanging out with Joe Del Monte, who's going to tell us a little bit about strategies to lower tax and have killer rates of return. What's up, Joe?
How are you, Kenner? Thanks for having me.
I'm glad we're here talking about this. This is something that's very important as we get close to the end of the year or at the beginning of the year. Either one, someone should be thinking about taxes. We like to do proactive tax planning for all of our clients, and that's important. But at the same time, sometimes the end of the year comes up. People are looking for last minute tax deductions, tax savings, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always a good time to talk to you, really. But let's throw out some ideas right off the bat. We have about 15 minutes. Throw out some good tax ideas and make it relevant to your stuff. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, Kenner, part of my past career path was I was a financial planner. I served close to 100 families, and inevitably every single one of those families would come in and say, when I ask them, hey, what are you trying to solve? What's the problem here we're trying to get after? Well, I want to pay less in taxes. Yeah. And so my typical response, and just trying to keep it jovial and fun, was like, well, how complicated do you want your life, right? And, what I found is most people don't want their life complicated, and they don't want to put anything in place that's going to be a red flag or trigger an audit from the IRS. I don't know anybody that enjoys that process if you've been through it. And so the cool thing about what I'm going to talk with you in the group about today is, in the area of benefit, bang for your buck, but not having complexity, the key is oil and gas drilling. These are working interests in oil and gas wells that we offer. This has been in the tax code since the 70s. Tons of case law around it, really unchallenged, unchanged for that long of a period of time. The United States is the number one producer of oil globally. So it's kind of like there's a lot of incentive to drill domestically in this country. And so the cool thing is that there's no complexity to this whatsoever. To keep it quite simple, you get a massive deduction on the front end for owning these working interests in new wells. 75% to 85% of your investment can be written off of ordinary income in the year that you invest, which is huge for our high W-2 earners, self-employed people, business owners. And it's a K-1. It's a K-1 in March, and it's partnership accounting for all the CPAs and tax preparers out there. So it's not complicated. On the spectrum of uncomplicated, it is extremely simple and basic, but the effect is huge. Oh, and I should mention this, which is also important. It's got, I don't like to say zero because there's nothing as 0%, but it's as close to zero as anything could be, 0% audit risk. This is not on the IRS list. Nobody gets audited for owning working interest in oil and gas. So it's a clean way to go about reducing your taxable income.
Yeah, I think there's three positive things. Yeah, one, you're right. It's simple. It really is simple. It's not like you have to do a whole bunch of things with respect to your taxes, your structure, et cetera. Plus, yeah, you get a deduction. That's a good thing. And sometimes it's huge. And let's talk about that in a few minutes. And then also you have good rates of return, potentially at least. No, not guaranteed generally, but you have good rates of return, three pretty good things. So let's work it backwards. Let's work taxes because, people come to us for tax stuff. So let's say I invest $100,000 and one of our clients invests $100,000. By the way, our clients or people who are listening and watching this are usually people who are, well-heeled solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and they're looking for tax strategies are making sense to them. So anyway, I invest $100,000 or they invest $100,000. What kind of tax benefit do we get?
Yeah. So there's three pillars of the tax benefit. Number one, I should mention this because sometimes I forget to. You do have to be accredited for this kind of investment. Yeah. Kind of, I imagine a lot of people you guys work with are accredited.
All of them.
So the upfront tax benefit is usually what draws people to the conversation in oil and gas, and that has to do with the intangible drilling costs on oil and gas. Intangible costs of drilling a well are anything that are intangible and they're one use, one and done. So, water, labor, sand, chemicals, even some casing, it's one and it's done. No residual value. That makes up the majority of the expenses on drilling a new well. And so we take it, 75% to 85% of the cost is going to go towards intangible drilling costs. Mm-hmm. The IRS lets you write all of those expenses off in the year that you make the investment. which is pretty cool. So, for example, our investors in last year's 2023 fund closed on December 31st, 2023. They were able to deduct 83% of their investment off of ordinary income. $100,000 investor in your example, they got a K1 showing an $83,000 loss, partnership accounting handed to the CPA, and it's easy breezy. So that's the first part of it, and that's the part that usually brings people to the table. The other two are less of an impact, but still significant, because we have intangible drilling costs, but you also have tangible drilling costs. These are the things that can be depreciated. So equipment, materials, certain pipe, certain casing that can be depreciated. Typically, that's going to make up 15 to 20% of your investment. So let's say $15,000 of your $100,000 went to tangible drilling costs. Normally, you would depreciate that over a 5-year period, but because of the Tax Cuts Jobs Act, we still have some accelerated depreciation left on the table, which I know you probably your people have probably heard you talk a lot about. So this year we can accelerate 60% of those costs. Next year we'll accelerate 40 and 20, and then so on. So you get that. And then the third part is the income. So the whole part of this is that it is an investment. It does have a return on investment that is more significant than the tax benefits, but it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years to get. That income that you get from that investment, 15% of that will always be tax-free. That's called the small producer's depletion allowance. So you have the upfront, the big bang that's kind of helping you out right now. You have the tangibles, which are slowly depreciating over a 5-year period, hopefully sooner than later. And then you have some tax-free income as well. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck on the tax side of things. If you're looking at a person that has high income, your self-employed people, business owners, and gosh, they can only do so much. They can only give so much. They can only, expense so much through the business. They got to start thinking about putting their money to work. Oil and gas is a phenomenal opportunity to do that and help out with, the major tax problem that you have right now.
Yeah. So far, of the three kind of what I consider the big positive elements to you guys, again, simplicity, tax, and rate of return. So now we've gone over number one, let's say tax. So let's talk about the rate of return. I know you can't guarantee anything. Yeah, this is for information purpose only. We get that whole deal, right? Tell us a little bit about the rates of return that are potential, or maybe even past returns, to give an indication of what we might be able to look at as far as $100,000 investment.
Yeah. Awesome. So part of that has to do with how you structure the deal. Oil and gas is really all about, let me back up. There's exploratory drilling, there's developmental drilling. Okay, exploratory drilling is you're exploring. You're stepping out of tiered, of producing acreage, and you're going to try to prove up new acreage. That comes with a lot of risks, potentially a ton of reward, but there's a lot of downside. There's the opportunity to hit dry holes. We don't do that. So I'm going to take that one off the table. We're talking about developmental drilling. In developmental drilling, you're talking, different acreage, tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 being the most proven acreage with the most data, the most infrastructure in place. That's where we choose to partner and operate in those areas. So for us, when we underwrite an opportunity to put into our fund, a well, a project, a group of wells, there's one variable that we have to deal with that is the unknown. In your world, Kenner, maybe it's interest rates or maybe it's the markets, right? In our world, it's the oil price. This price moves relatively non-correlated to any of those other things. So we use a $60 oil price to underwrite our deals at. And the reason we use 60 is if you look at, oil over a 10, 15, 20-year period even, when oil drops below 60, it tends to rebound within a matter of months. So it's a pretty stable price level. Now, when we use 60, we also have industry-leading low fee structure, so that helps us use 60. We want to know that our investors can get a 30+% internal rate of return, and over a 5-year period, you take in the tax benefits, you take in the returns on the revenue from the hydrocarbons, you add all that together over a 5-year period. If we can be at a 1.75x to 2x total return over a 5-year period using $60 oil, then that is that is a project that we would entertain being in our deals. Now, if we're looking at $75 oil, $80 oil and above, those numbers are much greater. But for us, one of our strategic advantages in the industry is that our deals are so lean from a fee structure. So the hurdle is so low for investors. They can be profitable at 60. They can be profitable at 55, even lower than that. But we are in this for, if we can, get an investor to double their money with low oil prices, 12 to 20% annualized returns,
Hmm.
and it solves a huge tax problem for them up front, then we think that's a pretty good investment. Forget the $90 oil, the $100 oil.
Yeah.
Listen, if that happens, like, everything's phenomenal, right? But we don't talk about that. That's a unknown, of course.
Yeah.
We want to know on the downside, can investors be profitable? And so that's how we structure our deals to do that.
Yeah, but by the way, that's a little funny that you're wanting higher oil price for the clients, because then again, they're paying for more expensive stuff down the road. But that's a whole nother deal. Roof shingles, everything. Anyway,
Sure.
all right. So
I mean, give and take, right? High risk pump, better in your investment. Who knows?
I know.
It all evens out.
I know, I get it. But I get it. You're being myopic, but I would be myopic in that case too. Especially if one of our clients is in the fund. I'm sure there will be if there aren't already. I'm sure that's all they care about are higher prices. They make much money. Okay, so we've talked about the 1 and 2 positive elements that I would foresee. Obviously tax rates of return, killer rates of return from the sound, so at least potentially. Though, what about simplicity? Let's go over that, because I think people are going to like that too. It's pretty simple. How does someone open an account with you, et cetera, et cetera? By the way, it's not as though I'm getting paid in any way by you to talk about your fund. I just think it's something that's intriguing potentially to some of our clients. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have a very simple process. This is a limited partnership, so it's a 506c offering. All of our information is housed on a fintech platform called Tribexa. We basically give you access to that. You create a username login, and you can go through the due diligence process. If you decide you want to invest, you can invest through there. We have to, obviously approve the paperwork and all the due diligence that goes with that. And then you could do funding through there. Your distributions are paid through there. Statements are paid through there. So it's, you have a portal, you could check on that, your quarterly updates and communications from us. It's a very simple, I would say hands-off investment. It's as simple as can be. And then again, from a tax perspective, it's K1s every year. You're literally just handing your K1s to a CPA.
Yep. So it's not like they have to go and dig, meaning investors, they don't have to go and dig the dirt. You guys do all the work and you get the tax.
We'd rather them not. I don't dig the dirt. Let me just tell you that. I wouldn't know the first thing about being on there and what I was looking at, machinery wise, operation wise. But that's, you got geologists, you got reservoir engineers, you got the drilling company, you got the water company, electric company. You got a lot of people out there that have a lot of different roles, and then you have us that sit in air conditioning, and we structure the funds, and we're the investment guys. So
yeah, well, actually, being serious, all kidding aside, now I am wondering, for me, this is the nerd part of me, the logistics of digging a well. So this is more for me. I'm sure some of the listeners and viewers are going to think these are weird questions, but what's it like? So you guys are in your office in some cool area in the East Coast or whatever, right? But and you guys hire a group, whatever, engineers, and then people under them that actually look for, somehow figure out where the oil is, right? How does that work? The logistics. I think that's pretty cool.
Well, first you have to understand the landscape of the industry, right? There's tier 1, 2, and 3 acreage, as I mentioned before. Yeah. Tier 1 is proven acreage. There's a lot of existing wells. There's seasoned production, infrastructure, roads, saltwater disposal, electric. It's all there. When you go there and drill, you're not wondering, are you going to hit anything? You're going where the hydrocarbons are.
But how do they know that? It seems way expensive to dig and find a dry well. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you why. Because it's the largest companies, the Exxons, the Marathons, the Mewbournes, the Continentals. Every year they take a portion of their CapEx. Let's say it's 10%. It could be billions of dollars at 10%. And they have to go prove up other acreage, because it's a similar concept to, how many McDonald's can you open up in a square mile, right? Before they start cannibalizing each other. They're very strategic about that. So with these wells, it's the same thing. There's only so much acreage to drill on. Once you have tier 1 soaked up, which, by the way, all the tier 1 is owned by the largest operators in the company, they have to go prove up new acreage so they can take that chance. Now, where does that money come from? That money comes from the larger institutions that can stomach that kind of risk.
Yeah.
They have the money and the capital to put forward. You and I, you're investors. We're not typically the people that are trying to get into those kinds of deals.
Mm.
If you're dealing with billionaires, Kenner, I'm not personally dealing with billionaires, but if you are, those might be people that have access or want that kind of risk.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of us, we want to go where we know there's hydrocarbons. So we let the big companies do what they do with the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars every year, prove up new acreage. Once they prove that up, now we know that's an area that we want to try to get into.
And then
I don't know if that makes it any more clear, but
I get it. And I just think that's fascinating because like the expense of doing a well is unbelievably expensive. But you're right, probably the big guys do that. But then again, I know there's some small independent players also. But and obviously you guys are professionals. You guys know the gig, how to lower risk for investors because you've been able to come through. I just think the whole thing's fascinating, the logistics. And then, by the way, on top of that, they're getting wells out in the water, in the ocean, in deep ocean.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to me.
It's really cool. And there is kind of a spot for anybody. So you mentioned some of the smaller operators. A lot of those guys are just, not to say it in like a demeaning way. I don't mean it this way, but like more of like a mom and pop, like third generation oil family, drilling vertical wells.
Yeah.
They might be $300,000 wells. You get a lot of that. That's not really stuff that moves the needle, but it's the horizontal drilling. The technology nowadays, Kenner, is so far advanced than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's a whole field of study called reservoir engineering.
Yeah.
Reservoir engineers, they make a lot of money. They're really smart, and their whole job is to study mounds and mounds of data about what's thousands of feet below the ground. Now, the more wells you drill in an area, the more you have water to cut and can test that water cut, the more season production you have, the more data you have. And so they analyze that data and they can come up with a pretty reasonable idea of, hey, here's what you could expect as far as estimated ultimate recovery on this well. Here's the rate of production that you could expect. Here's the water cut you might expect, those types of things. So technology has advanced this so far beyond, hey, this seems like a good area. There's a well down the road, right? There's a lot more science that goes into it. And, thankful for that because and at the end of the day, all of that helps reduce risk for individual investors.
Yeah, I bet you those people who do that, who analyze those reservoirs, is a loaded dude, man, because there's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
If you come through on that, I'm sure you've added value big time. And if you suck at it, dude, that's not good. Your head's going to be chopped off. You know what I mean?
That's for sure. You'll be left out there.
Yeah, exactly. You stay out there. You go in the well, in that deep well. Right. So, just kidding, obviously. All right. So why don't we go ahead and land this plane? So, how does someone get a hold of you if they want to learn more information about you and also your investment?
Yeah. So a couple of easy ways. One is you can go right to our website, Invito. That's INVITOEP.com, short for Energy Partners. So InvitoEP.com. We put a lot of education up there, articles, videos, things like that. You can check out it. There's a link on there that says something about, current offerings, and then just, request access. We'll get that information. We'll reach out to you and we'll give you access for whatever we have at that time. Right now, we're a couple of days away from launching our new fund. You can also call me directly. I do not mind if someone calls me directly. I love the conversations. Anyone that has an interest in oil and gas. Here's the unique thing, Kenner, is we're not selling silver coins or gold coins. I don't get thousands of calls a day.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a sensationalized type of opportunity. So I give out my cell phone number. It's 704-604-8884. Dial me up. Let me know what your interest level is, what you want to know, and whatever information I have, I'm happy to share it. If you have an interest in learning about this space, whether, from a broad perspective or about our fund, happy to have those conversations. So, and then of course, get in touch with your man, Kenner. If you're a client of Kenner and a client of his firm and getting services from his group, then that would be my first phone call, because maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's not. And he might be able to help you figure that out. And of course we can step in as well. So.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases it is appropriate because, again, they're getting tax benefits, potential good rate of return, and, it's relatively easy in general. So I think it's Yeah, glad we have you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really seriously do. And for everyone else out there, you're taking time. You could be watching some cool thing on Netflix. Instead, you're hanging out with Joe and Kenner. So I really appreciate you taking the time here to listen and watch the Vast Voice telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Once again, it's Kenner. If you ever need anything, go ahead and stop by vastsolutionsgroup.com, hang out, do a click there, and we'd love to chat with you. Once again, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kenner. Appreciate the time. Thanks, everyone.